The U.S. President Joe Biden in India. Also, dozens of other world leaders have arrived for the G20 Summit. It has now going to be something that the whole world has been looking forward to. It's kicking off officially. We'll get you the updates. We'll get you the analysis. First, this is what we got from the UN Secretary General, Antonio Guterres. He's beautifully captured the current state of world affairs. Listen to this.
We are indeed one global family. We today resemble a rather dysfunctional one. Divisions are growing, tensions are flaring up, and trust is eroding, which together raise the spectre of fragmentation and ultimately confrontation.
The UN Secretary General describing the current state of world affairs right now. Let's go across to my colleagues Sumit Chaturvedi and Sumita Karir joining us from the G20 Summit venue. And let's discuss this. Sumita, first to you about the big arrivals so far and the manner in which they've been received, the kind of optics you've seen over there, the mood that you've captured. What would you say those are? Sumita?
We can say that we can start with the big day. Before that, one thing is clear today, that India is definitely poised to take a leadership position in the whole world, because as we see across all this Bharat Mandapam, it's all buzz about who's going to come here and start attending G20 Summit from tomorrow. Well, a number of world leaders have arrived already, including US President Biden, Rishi, Sunak, UK Prime Minister, and heads of state of UAE, South Africa, Egypt, all of them, Bangladesh. So it's a crucial 2 days going to be from here on, and I will turn to my colleague Sumita. Sumita, well, lots of things will be discussed today. What are the primary things you can talk about?
Yes, Sumit, like you stated, that it's been a day, it's been an eventful day. In fact, earlier in the day, we had press conference by, of course, the organizing team of G20, including Mr. Amitabh Kant, Harshvardhan Shringla, and tomorrow is going to be the big day when, leaders of more than 20 countries and special invitees by India will be engaging in talks that are crucial not just to one particular country, but globally, especially the focus will be given by India to the global south. But now coming to the most important event of this evening, well, President Biden is shortly going to have a bilateral with Prime Minister Modi. He arrived in the national capital just a few minutes back. He's reached Prime Minister Modi's residence to have that very, very crucial conversation about some key areas related to emerging technology, related to space, related to defense deals, GE deals, and a whole lot more. Now, Sumit, I think the one crucial thing that I think our viewers should know is the fact that geopolitics here is being merged with tech, in the sense that there are, nations are grouping, multiple groupings are emerging in the tech landscape. For instance, you have China, which is, giving its might behind developing tech. Then you have Taiwan. Then you have United States on the other hand. And now India is also developing the tech arm.
And absolutely, Sumita, and it's happening in the backdrop of the Russia-Ukraine war. Remember, 3 years since COVID happened. So the world is clearly having new allies, because world understands they have to come together to face the crisis and convert these crises into opportunities. So India stands to gain a lot when it comes to these crises. We have seen how India delivered vaccines to the world. So a lot has to happen when it comes to India's position in the world, and I'm sure it's improving.
Absolutely. And, coming back to the bilateral, that is to start in just a few minutes from now. And of course, we'll be getting you all the live updates on ET Now. There was speculation that perhaps a bilateral may be around a special rail deal with India. And of course, with engagements from Middle Eastern countries, Saudi Arabia, UAE as well. But Jake Sullivan, the NSA of the United States, earlier in the day dismissed that. He did not confirm actually about all of these reports coming out. However, he did say that it's an initiative that US has invested effort into with its partners. In fact, that was the main messaging that came out of NSA Jake Sullivan. But we can look forward to deals, especially as far as the GE jet engine deal is concerned, Predator drones are concerned, 5G, 6G spectrum is concerned. So a whole lot of tech deals also on the anvil.
So we can talk about one more important thing, Sumita, here, that overall, if we talk about things, one thing is sure, that some deals are happening. Will be clear only in the next few days whether they how far to reality they are. But one important thing that has caught my attention, at least, is the railway link that is going to be connected, as speculations are, from India to UAE to Europe. Well, that's going to be a counter to BRI, which is China's big overall, say, that infrastructure project. That's an interesting thing to watch out for so far, yeah.
And in fact, another important thing that I wanted to mention here before, we give it back to you, Vikram, in the studio is... the fact that, not only did Jake Sullivan say that, but United States is really seeing India as a trusted partner, not just in technology-related exchanges, but of course to counter China's presence in the global south. So that is a very, very key thing to watch out for, because just earlier this year we had another meeting, Prime Minister Modi's state visit to the United States. So of course, all of the details, whenever they emerge out about this bilateral, that will be interesting to watch out for.
Riding on this, Sumita and Sumit, thank you indeed for filling us in on what's in store. But of course, as far as the bilateral, the big one is between India and the U.S. But besides that as well, United Kingdom is in focus. And remember, we have the possibility of an FTA, a free trade agreement with the United Kingdom. And like he is often referred, India's son-in-law, the British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak, is also in the national capital. But he would not commit on any timeline for that FTA, on the free trade agreement between India and UK. This is what we got from him.
Well, both Modi ji and I are keen to see a comprehensive and ambitious trade deal concluded between our two countries. Both of us think that there is a good deal to be done, but trade deals always take time. They need to work for both countries, and although we've made enormous progress, there is still hard work to go, and that's what we need to keep going through. The G20 is not the forum for those discussions. Of course, I will touch on that with Prime Minister Modi, but the teams are working very hard. But as I said, there's hard work to go, but we will keep working through it. But I think there is an enormous opportunity for both India and the UK to strengthen our economic cooperation, which will bring real benefits to our citizens in both countries.
So clearly, no timeline just yet as far as the FTA between India and UK is concerned. And the British Prime Minister has also pointed out that G20 may not be the correct forum for a finalization of that deal. We'll see what happens. But what is on India's mind as it hosts top global leaders for the G20 Summit? Let's get a deeper understanding of what's in store. Of course, the expectation around the bilateral meeting between Modi and Biden is that they will focus on fast-tracking the promises that were made in June and review the status of the projects that were announced in Washington. Let's listen in to the India G20 Sherpa, what he has said about what is likely as far as India's expectation from this big summit is concerned.
Both SDGs and climate action require finance, particularly for developing and emerging markets in the global south. It was critical that we focus on multilateral institutions of the 21st century, how to redesign and reform them. And our view was that global south, developing countries, emerging markets, which has been a very, very key component of India's presidency, must be able to get long-term financing and must be able to use new instruments for financing to drive both SDG and climate finance. We got the perspective of 125 leaders, and then we remained focused on the perspective of the global south and the requirements of the developing countries. And the New Delhi Leaders' Declaration, which many of you will see post the summit, you will see it as a voice of the global south and the developing countries.
India is positioning itself as the voice of the global south. Through the bilaterals that are taking place, the Prime Minister has tweeted about the bilaterals with Biden, with the Premier from Bangladesh, with Mauritius as well, and of course the British Prime Minister. But what can we expect from the big one as far as the India-U.S. bilaterals are concerned? Following up on the big visit, the state visit by the Prime Minister to Washington, let's decode it. Jan Dasgupta, former ambassador and representative of India at the WTO, is joining us along with Maruf Raza, consultant and strategic affairs expert. It's great that this bilateral is taking place at the G20 Summit under India's presidency right now. And of course, Mr. Dasgupta, this is Biden's first trip to India as the President of the United States. And this Biden visit comes 3 months after Modi's state visit to Washington. In your opinion, what should we expect from this meeting, especially when it comes to the civil nuclear cooperation between the two countries? The plan is for 6 nuclear reactors that would be set up in India at Kovada in Andhra Pradesh, and one that would see the forging of a partnership between the Nuclear Power Corporation and the American company Westinghouse Electric. How far do you think this will be pursued by the two countries in this bilateral?
This is one of the most important things which is likely to get discussed. Apart from, of course, the General Electric F414 fighter jet joint collaboration between GE and HAL, and the placement of this orders or an agreement, letter of acceptance from the U.S. to India's offer to buy Predator drones, 31 of them. Now, on the civil nuclear cooperation front, there has been some movement in the past, and there is this possibility that we will go forward with these 6 nuclear plants, which will be modular in nature, and which will take us forward on the path to reduce our dependency on fossil fuels. And as you know, there is this discussion going on in the G20 about whether we should reiterate just the Bali Declaration of unabated coal-dependent energy production, or we should enhance it to fossil-based energy production. And Saudi Arabia and Russia have objected to this issue.
Yes.
So this is on the sideline, but nuclear energy is something to which we are committed.
Absolutely.
And we had this landmark deal in the last decade,
Yes.
the earlier decade. And this is indeed going to be one of the highlights of the discussion, apart from several other important issues.
Absolutely, Mr. Dasgupta, you hit the nail on the head, because at this point in time, India as a growing economy has this huge need for power. As far as our requirements are concerned, there is a shortage right now. And how much of these deals are signed for nuclear power to come in a big way to power our economic aspirations, that remains to be seen, and perhaps there will be movement on that count. Maruf, on the defense front, how significant are the jet engine and drone deals now in this bilateral from India's strategic interests? And how close are we, according to you, to seeing these deals signed off at the G20 Summit this time, considering now that the U.S. Congress has given that go-ahead to the jet engine deal with India?
See, Vikram, before I get into the specifics of the defense deals,
Sure.
please understand that Mr. Modi has done a number of things breaking away from the normal treaded path. One of them is to go ahead and have a bilateral meeting with somebody as important as the US president. You know, protocol and all that stuff in the past, that you don't use these events for bilateral engagement, be damned. Because what has happened, that with China boycotting, the Chinese president, not China boycotting, the G20 summit, Russian president skipped the Bali summit and now this one. So clearly the lines are divided. And there is an East-West rivalry. There is a Cold War, and G20 itself, whatever our officials may try, will also be a platform for seeing who blinks first in this geostrategic rivalry that has now come to play. The second aspect is that with America, India now has hinged its hopes without abandoning its relationship with Russia, whatever the pressures on India from the West and the East. That means China and Washington. There are groups there who don't want India to engage with Russia. And Russia has been a big defense supplier, but the hardware that comes from Russia in many cases doesn't match the level of technology that America is willing to give. The F414 engine you spoke about is something that we've been hankering for many years, but it's been hung up for one reason or the other, congressional approval, White House nod, and what have you. Now that is going to go through if America is serious about its partnership with India. If it lets India down on this one, it can then not hope to have India very much on its side, whatever other American assertions. The third thing is, it is not just the Predator drones, but there is another higher generation of drones that can even fire missiles, etc., which are very, very lethal, that we are looking at buying. We are clearly looking at strengthening our high-tech military capability based on supplies from countries like America. And the low-tech for which we have industries, that is for armored personnel carriers, for tanks, for vehicles, for missile systems, all that we already have in place. We can't abandon it that easily, because for India to completely reform its defense infrastructure, you're going to look at maybe close to $1,000 billion.
Right.
And that kind of money is not available for a country like India at this stage.
Right.
So we have to do a mix and match exercise.
Exactly.
What is more important is for Mr. Modi to convey a message to the Chinese that you might try and rally camps together, whether at the BRICS Summit or the SCO, or now at G20, you might try with your deep pockets going to tech diplomacy, which is China is the biggest lender to the developing world. Almost 50% of the money to the developing world is given by the Chinese.
Yes.
It's not going to buy the Chinese the kind of space that the South wants.
Correct.
The South has been neglected in the pandemic by the Western world.
Yes.
And therefore, the Southern countries, the global South, are looking for a leadership. So I think this is a great opportunity.
It's a great
for
opportunity for India. There's no doubt about that. But also, Mr. Dasgupta, during the Prime Minister's state visit to the United States, the pact for in-country renewal of H-1B visas was announced. But we don't have a launch date just yet. Like Maruf is saying, perhaps, the G20 is not the forum to kind of pursue this, but it is an important bilateral meeting that is taking place. And Mr. Modi has been able to push out what can happen or what can't happen on a G20 level. Do you think this is going to figure as well in the bilateral conversation between the two countries, between Mr. Modi and Mr. Biden?
Yes, this has in fact emerged in the press also, that a more liberal visa regime could be discussed briefly between the two heads of state. And of course, just to respond to Mr. Maruf Raza's point, Prime Minister Modi is not only meeting President Biden, he is meeting 14 other heads of state during this 2-day, 3-day really speaking event, 1 day prior and 2 days of 9th and 10th. So he has a packed schedule and he is trying to ensure that he gets to meet as many heads of state as possible in bilateral meetings.
Well, indeed. I mean, we're watching all that's happening at a bilateral level. And of course, Maruf, it's going to be India that's going to try and maneuver the stated stance it's had on the Russia-Ukraine war in discussions with the U.S., of course, against the backdrop of that divide that we are seeing within the G20. You think a joint declaration is likely, considering that Russia and China may not sign off on it? Because the real question to ask is if India and its soil can act as a catalyst for peace. As a voice of the global South, do you think India can play a vital role when it comes to this particular war, where we are not likely to see an end anytime soon?
See, it's a case of yes and no. And please remember that Mr. Modi was credited in helping put together the communique at Bali. But, I have personally lost faith in joint statements and communiques. They're hollow words, they never get followed up. But what can happen, and here is India's big opportunity, that when the world has been denying 1/6 of humanity, that is India, with all other credentials backing India's position in the world, a high table seat, this is India's opportunity to gather together anything from 60 to 125 countries to be supporters of India. And as Mr. Amitabh Kant mentioned earlier in his speech on your show, that we need a better world order. We need a world order where there is greater accountability and there is greater say for those who've been marginalized. And that's why India has done the smart thing by tapping the African countries and Latin American countries. And you've seen the expansion of the BRICS also took place quietly by India bringing in some of its friends, like Saudi Arabia, with which I think Mr. Modi is also having a bilateral meeting with Prince MBS, and UAE, which is part of UAE, India, Israel, the combination of 4 countries. And India is now looking at shaping a new narrative. And if we miss this opportunity because of diplomatic coyness,
Yes.
which we have missed in the past, you may recall that many years ago, when Prime Minister Manmohan Singh was invited indirectly to lead the 53-nation Commonwealth grouping in Sri Lanka,
That's right.
he didn't go there for local domestic political reasons because, Tamil Nadu, Sri Lanka, and all that kind of politics that happens.
Yes.
But here is your chance to take a leadership role.
Yes.
And come in with your, muscles flexed and saying, listen,
Yes.
I speak for this part of the world.
Sure.
You guys have neglected them during the pandemic because you were a shambles.
Yes.
You couldn't get your own act together to keep your country safe.
Yes.
But we provided medical assistance.
Yes.
We went out and created a support system for countries
Yes.
that nobody was talking to.
But talking
And
about
this is
support systems, Maruf, there is an important element in creating systems that will act as that base, as that support. Looking at poverty and its elimination, looking at climate change, for that you need a robust financial system as well. And Mr. Dasgupta, Biden is expected to push for reforms of MDBs, the multilateral development banks. There would be a proposal to boost financial capabilities of these institutions. How much support do you see for it from the Indian side, keeping in mind that all these factors, whether it's poverty, whether it's climate change, these are issues at the heart of these MDBs. Would it be in India's interest to support Biden on this?
Absolutely. And I think the lead has been taken. Mr. N.K. Singh and Larry Summers, they have co-chaired a group which has come out with the first installment of its report. The second part and the concluding part is going to come out in October about reforming the MDB. And that is of the essence in tackling poverty and other issues like climate change finance. And on the issue of climate change finance, I may mention that China has put forward a strong advocacy of the fact that climate change has to be intertwined with technology transfer, whereas the U.S. does not accept this position. It wants to separate climate change from technology transfer. And once technology transfer is isolated, of course, climate financing also becomes much more difficult. So all these issues have to be tackled together. And one of the key elements in this would be the reforms of the multilateral development bank, because bilaterally, it is not possible to take forward the agenda of UNFCCC and have very concrete outcomes as are desirable on the climate front. So everybody has to step up, and India will support the US and all the other countries which want a much larger role for the MDBs in climate finance.
Exactly how that part goes as well. Several moving pieces. A lot of it could be accomplished at the G20 Summit. It's just about unfolding now as world leaders have landed in the national capital. Maruf Raza, Jayant Das Gupta, many thanks for joining us with your perspective. We'll keep getting more of that on our subsequent shows. But yes, we are watching all the developments on the many bilaterals taking place as part of the G20 Summit. Meanwhile, the global recognition of India's digital journey is quite undeniable. People worldwide eager to understand how India has progressed in the realm of technology. So my colleague Sumit is here providing further insights into India's digital growth, specifically in the context of AI. This is the report he's filed.
India's digital journey is acknowledged by the world, but many of the delegates, they want to know more about how far India has come when it comes to e-technology, digital and all that. Well, for delegates, there's a unique way. It's by cycling on this particular spot where they can cycle and show and see what journey about the whole digital India, how far India has come when it comes to digital journey, and what are the main things, how ground level things have happened. Well, what is the whole thing? What's the overall thought behind this? Mr. Jha is joining us from Ministry of Electronics from here, and we can ask him. Mr. Jha, what is this cycling all about here in G20 Pavilion?
This cycling is all about to give the health to the people who are joining us, and as well as provide them the wealth of information on the digital India. So as we cycle more, we'll get to know more about the digital India milestones. So you can see that I am cycling. Now I have reached a milestone called Bhasni. Bhasni is basically providing the language localization facility in India. More than 400 artificial intelligence-based models have been built. I am cycling again, and I'm moving forward. And as I move forward, I have reached to the another milestone of digital India called FASTag. This FASTag is basically enabling the toll payment system when vehicle is in motion. And you can see the monthly transactions which it has facilitated. Now I am reaching the Smart City initiative of Digital India. Under this, more than 100 cities are getting provided the digital amenities to increase the decency of life of the people. Now I am reaching to the GSTN, which is basically one nation, one market, one tax platform. And more than 14 million taxpayers are enrolled here. So as we pedal more, we are going to receive more and more milestones of Digital India. Just now across the COVID, I'm coming to PM Jan Dhan Yojana, which is basically world's largest financial inclusion initiatives.
So India has really come far when it comes to digital infrastructure. It has gone to the basic level from high to low. Now many people, millions and millions of people are using digital infra in the country, and this is a way to show to delegates how far have we come. It's to cycling, gaining health and gaining information.